What does a collapse of a superpower look like? It doesn't always start with a foreign invasion or a crashing stock market. Sometimes it starts with an unpaid bill. For the last 40 years, the United States of America, the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, has essentially stopped paying the people who protect its own borders. The Department of Homeland Security is effectively closed for business. Over 100,000 federal employees have missed multiple paychecks. The TSA, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, and the nation's top cybersecurity infrastructure all are operating on fumes. Why? Because lawmakers in Washington cannot agree on a budget. This crisis was not born out of a lack of money. It was born out of a profound ideological standoff over policing. On January 24, 2026, an individual named Alex Peretti was killed by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents. The incident sparked immediate outrage. Senate Democrats drew a hard line. They would completely block any funding for Homeland Securities unless strict new reforms were embedded into the law. They demanded mandatory body cameras, visible badge numbers, and strict warrant protocols. The Republican Party, led by President Donald Trump, flatly refused, arguing these reforms would handicap mass deportation operations. Neither side blinked. On February 14, the funding expired. The department went dark. Both sides are engaging in a high-stakes game of political chicken, but the collateral damage is catastrophic. What happens when the Department of Homeland Security shuts down? The people at the top keep arguing, but the people at the bottom stop eating. Right now, roughly 90% of Homeland Security's 260,000 employees are working without pay. Because they are deemed essential, they are legally required to show up to work, but the government is not legally required to issue them a paycheck. Look at the Transportation Security Administration. Just yesterday, the acting head of the TSA gave a devastating testimony before a House committee. By this Friday, TSA employees will have missed $1 billion in wages. Airport security workers are receiving eviction notices. Their cars are being repossessed. They are selling their own blood plasma just to buy groceries. Human endurance has a limit. The average daily absentee rate for TSA workers was normally 4%. Today, at major American airports, the call-out rate has surged to 50%. Over 480 TSA officers have quit entirely, resulting in the longest airport security wait times in U.S. history. And it's not just the airports. The U.S. Coast Guard is patrolling international waters without pay. Cybersecurity professionals defending the power grid are missing their mortgages. At FEMA, the Disaster Relief Fund has dwindled to just $3.6 billion, which means if a major hurricane hits the American coastline tomorrow, the federal government may not have the liquid cash to respond. National security has been reduced to a bargaining chip. But here's where the story moves from tragic to profoundly ironic. We must look at the specific legal mechanics of this shutdown, because it exposes a glaring miscalculation. Why did the Democrats shut down the department? To force reforms on ICE and halt the Trump administration's aggressive deportation push. Did it work? No. It actually backfired spectacularly. The partial shutdown has actually not affected ICE's core deportation operations. How is that possible? Because of a legislative loophole. Last year, the Republican Party used a parliamentary procedure to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which pre-funded ICE's deportation operations with tens of billions of dollars. Look at the objective reality on the ground. The very agency the Democrats wanted to restrict is fully funded and active. Meanwhile, the agencies that have absolutely nothing to do with the immigration dispute, like the Coast Guard, the TSA, disaster relief, are completely paralyzed. Just yesterday, the Senate attempted to break the deadlock with a compromise bill. It failed, 54 to 46. Democrats blocked it because it lacked police reforms. Republicans told them to get serious. Even President Trump has threatened to veto any compromise that doesn't include his own unrelated voting bills. That is a perfect circle of dysfunction. We ask a lot of our Homeland Security personnel to stand readily at a moment's notice. Those were the words of an American lawmaker this week. They are very noble words, but noble words do not pay the rent. And while Washington digs its trench deeper, the American public is left stranded in the terminal.